Good morning, everybody. I'm gonna wait just a minute, let folks check in live. And if you're watching the replay of this, don't forget that we still need financial support. So Joshua Generation.rocks. Also, you can do the stars thing here on Facebook. I'm still sort of learning about that, but we can definitely use your support to keep the tribe moving along. What we do is quite a bit different than probably what you expect, quote unquote, church to do. Again, waiting for a couple people to come in. Thank you for tuning in. I want to say big thank you, morning Sandy, to Pastor BB and Holly for letting me fill in today. Feels like quite a while since I filled in, but and so I know they're hopefully having a good mini vacation, relaxation, getaway, and so thank you for tuning in. I know when the cat's away, the mice like to play, and some people won't watch because BB or Holly's not preaching, but you kind of get stuck with me today. And I want to revisit something. Thank you for posting that, Whitney. Every year at this time, thank God for Facebook, right? It's both evil and beautiful at the same time. Thank you for the birthday wish. Who said that? Oh, Monica. Oh, God. Should have known. Thank you, Jackie. So every year at this time, my Facebook gets filled with these memories. Two things. Thank you, Whit. Number one is, it's a reminder this week that I'm getting older, and damn do I hate that. But, and sorry for the potty mouth there, excuse that. Then secondly, this week is a block of time in my Facebook that reminds me of that sermon I did years ago called Disturbing Grace. And it starts with, the story of a friend of ours who was murdered. And I'm not going to rehash all that. And at the time, my pastor, Mike, he shared the story of what happened at the court, at the trial. And he witnessed a grace giving by someone who didn't have to give it. And it was just powerful grace given to a mother giving grace to the man who murdered her son. And so, again, I don't want to rehash that. Just to remind you where my mind is. Two things. It's my birthday week. I'm getting old. Secondly, this framing of disturbing grace happens at this time every year. So I want to revisit it just briefly and kind of remind. Thank you for the birthday wishes, everybody. It's so sweet. I really wish we could bypass that, but apparently I'm turning 50 this year. So I want to talk about grace. Grace is not one of those very manly things that us guys like to talk about because the truth is grace seems like a weak word. When you compartmentalize it, it feels very weak. But the real meat of the word is not weak at all. So I want to tap on that just a little bit and maybe unpack a little bit more than I did. Hey, Hope. Love you guys. Grace is probably one of the most radical principles that you can tap into in your life. And let me explain that to you. Grace means you're giving someone more than they deserve, irrespective of what the cause of their need is. Let me simplify that just a little bit. When you see Joe standing at Walmart with a sign that says, anything will help, God bless. When you extend grace by giving money or food or whatever to that person, you do it irrespective of how that man landed there with that sign. You give out of your grace with no expectation of a return. And look, a lot of sacred texts, besides even our Christian Bible, are filled with an overflow of grace. It is a fundamental principle of living a spiritual life. It is fundamental to who we are as a tribe. We extend grace to people even when they've sometimes devastated us. So, those of us who try to live by grace, we know that we do it out of humility, and it comes from a knowledge of what humility really is. It's not just tolerance, right? And look, we are in Pride Month, right? We are in the middle of Pride Month, and the beauty of pride, pride's not for me, right? I'm a cis het, and pride's not for me. I do celebrate with all of you, and I love you so much that Monica and I celebrate with you. But pride's not for me. Pride's for those people who get to experience a grace during this month that maybe they've never experienced before. It's why we take the whole month to celebrate LGBT community coming together, celebrating, because we extend grace to one another, irrespective of where we come from or how we got there. And so, happy Pride to all of you lovely people. But also, let's remember that we have to be very careful during Pride Month not to be cliquish. And I've noticed that it can happen that way for us sometimes. What we need to be about during Pride Month is how welcoming can we be? Can we be absolutely ridiculous with our welcoming and our grace to people who aren't like us, right? It's the people we don't necessarily agree with, but obviously we can extend grace to those people. So for me, I cut my teeth in the Christian church. You guys know that. I was Southern Baptist for a long time, non-denominational for a long time, and now we kind of swim in this, what I've begun telling my patients, in this spiritually fluid, kind of spiritually fluid life that we're living right now. And that is to say, we are ridiculous in how we shower people with love and grace. And so it doesn't sort of conform to one set of rules or one sacred text or one religious belief, but it encompasses kind of what our tribe embraces, and that is radical love, disturbing grace. So I say all that to unpack a little deeper, right? The Christian text, which I'm most familiar with, is littered with this grace that we can definitely take to heart, right? Think about it. Well, the very life of Jesus in the Christian scriptures is a grace beyond grace, someone giving their life for others. But that's not the only grace. Think about the prodigal son and how the father welcomed the wayward son in and showered him with grace after he had squandered all that he had been given. And the widow's mite being more valuable than the rich man's money. A grace that was extended there and defined in that very moment. Jesus talked about forgiveness and how to be graceful in our forgiveness. And if you remember, Jesus said, forgive 70 times 70. And you can be real technical with that, and you can say, well, 70 times 7, what is that, 490? But the truth is, what Jesus was really saying there is, don't bother counting. You forgive indefinitely. You extend grace in such a ways that when people look at what you're doing, when you're extending that grace and forgiveness, when you extend it to people who don't deserve it, other people see it and they don't understand it because they don't live in that life, right? And so it disturbs them, and it bothers them. It may even bother you when you're in the middle of doing it. And a reckless love. Whitney just posted a reckless love, and it truly is reckless, because what happens is you can be hurt by extending that type of love and grace to people. You set yourself up. The truth is, you set yourself up that you can be hurt and you can be damaged. But hopefully you've surrounded yourself with people who sort of overflow with this grace and can hold you up. So sorry, I'm not sure what happened. I'm blaming it on evil spirits or something. I don't know. So I apologize. We got disconnected. So kind of wait for everybody to gather back in. I don't know how we're going to splice that video together, but we'll get it figured out. All right, we live on y'all's end over there?
Okay, yeah, sure, live. 48 seconds ago.
Yeah, so I'm sorry about that, guys. Forgive us, technology and all that jazz. So let me pick up again and try to piece together what's left. All that we just talked about, extending love and grace to people, the true grace that you give people should be something that bothers you. It shouldn't be comfortable. I wish it were, but the truth is, take two, thank you. So all this grace we're talking about, grace by definition is an undeserved gift. It is the difference between mercy and grace. Is mercy. Grace is what we give people who don't deserve it. Mercy, we extend it to people as well, but it's a little different. So, where you're going to find your most disturbing grace is when you give it to people who don't deserve it. So how many of us have had somebody who have hurt us intentionally, maybe unintentionally, but most likely intentionally? How many of us have had somebody truly come at us and do damage to our emotions, to our spirit? When you extend forgiveness and grace to those people, that's when you're really demonstrating true grace. And look, that doesn't discount what's happened. You don't want to allow a lot of people in your life who hurt you constantly, and you have to continually extend forgiveness and grace to them, because that's going to hurt you in the long run. But if you hold on to it, it's going to hurt you more than it hurts them. Forgive, give grace, move on. If you need to distance yourself from people, then do that. And we try to, it is a difficult balance. Somebody, I believe it looks like, how do you balance without hurting yourself and allowing yourself to be hurt? It's a difficult balance. I don't have a perfect answer for you there. It does make sense. You want reckless love. You want to be vulnerable, because if you live life in a suit of armor, you never get to know truly the true people around you. So you are setting yourself up for some pain and some hurt. But the positives far outweigh the negatives. So you got to take a chance, and then make sure you surround yourself with a good tribe who can, when you are pricked and hurt by those people, they can lift you up and strengthen you. You have to balance it for sure. Grace is a foreign concept to most of the world. It is not natural for us to extend grace to people. I remember in my first sermon about grace, I talked about we think that we understand what grace really means, because the bank will give you a grace period if you need to pay something. When you hear about politicians falling from grace, right? There in music, those of you who are musically inclined, there's a grace note. We describe dancers or ballet as graceful. Reckless love can be terrifying. Yeah. When we name, people grace, and so we talk about grace like we really know what it means, but I'm not sure that we truly understand grace until we actually give it or receive it. So I believe over the years what's happened is people of faith have settled for a weak, wimpy grace. It's a word that's littered in the hymns and songs of church. It fits real nice on a church sign when you drive by. The grace that we have embraced over the years as churches and people of faith has never demanded a real response from people, and real grace does demand a response, because a real grace is so disturbing that it's going to affect the people you give it to in such a way that catches them off guard, and maybe to the point where they're angry with you because they haven't experienced that type of grace. When you ask 1 million people in the church world that we grew up in if they believe in grace, 999,999 of them will say, yeah, I do believe in grace. Yes, none of them would probably say no. But the truth is they haven't really been changed by grace, because what happens in the church world, we've created these circles, right? And you have to fit into that circle to be part of a group, right? To be part of our group, you have to be baptized a certain way. You have to speak in tongues. You have to read a certain text. You have to say certain words. A, B, C equals D, and you're good to go. The pamphlets are full of it, right? The brochures we were to give out were full of how to be part of the circle. What really disturbs people is when we open that circle up and say, everybody's welcome. We're giving grace to everybody. We're going to throw it like glitter at a drag show. We're going to throw it on everybody. And it's so bad that it's literally like the glitter at a drag show. It's there way beyond weeks. You find glitter in your hair and in your nose. And so that grace that we give people, this is why Christian churches are struggling with our little tribe, is because the way we give grace to everyone. It's why we get hate mail. It's why BB and Susan receive, some of the messages that are troublesome that they receive. It's why when people hear about our little tribe, they get bothered by it, because they're not used to seeing grace extended like that. It disturbs them. And so we've settled for it over the years, and we've opened the floodgates of what real grace should be. Our tribe has been shaped by grace. If you listen to the stories of each one of the leaders of this little Joshua generation group, you're going to find that each of our stories has woven into it the thread of grace that a lot of people haven't experienced before. And so we've decided to create that environment for everyone. Now, I want to finish up real quick. I don't know how many of you have ever read the book The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. But this book is a beautiful picture of disturbing grace, right? If you remember, if you've read it, if you haven't, go read it. But if you've read it, you remember the tree invites the boy to come and play in the shade, right? To protect him from the sun. Then the tree offers for the boy to burn its branches to keep warm. Then he offers for the boy to cut down the trunk for lumber to build a home. And then the tree offers the stump for him to sit down on when he was a tired old man. What you see is that tree giving grace over and over, to the point where the purpose of the tree becomes the ultimate act of sacrifice and grace. And grace gives and gives and gives, and there is no limit. And this is why it's hard, right? This is why I say disturbing grace. Because even the people who've hurt you the most, you need to extend it to. Even the ones who, you have to set up some boundaries. I see Whit has posted healthy boundaries, definitely. But if you don't extend that grace to the person who's hurt you the most, then you hurt yourself, right? That old saying about drinking bitterness is like drinking poison and hoping somebody else gets sick. That's what happens when you don't extend that grace to people around you. And the giving tree is a great example of that. You may have to sacrifice some things to give that grace. But the beauty of pruning like that is new growth comes, right? When that's a whole nother sermon, but when trees are pruned, new life comes from the pruning. And when you give grace that really troubles you or those around you, you are in a way pruning so that you can have new growth. You'll experience an elevation of your spirit that you haven't experienced before. Even the most spiritual of people, whether it be from Christianity, whether it be from Islam, whether it be from Hindu, Buddhism, they all center around this principle that to elevate our spirits, there needs to be sacrifice on our part. Now, I believe that whatever you call the divine, right? I think BB and Holly are good about saying spirit. This divine spirit that we all sort of tap into somehow. That divine spirit wants to be in relationship with us so that we can be in better relationship with those around us. It's why BB talks about I am a lot. And because I am encompasses what we are as a whole and makes it where we can be part of other people's lives as well in a different way than we are interacting with them daily. We can connect in the spirit in a way that we can't connect in our daily lives. Only way that happens is by extending grace to those around us. So I want to finish by this. There's a book, years ago I read a book by Philip Yancey called What's So Amazing About Grace. And there's a sentence in that book that says, no one gets paid according to merit when it comes to grace. When you rattle that phrase around in your brain a little bit, you realize that it benefits not only the people you extending grace to, but it benefits us as well. Because if grace were extended to us based on our merit, then we're all in bad shape. We're all going to be miserable, ungrateful people, because peace comes from extending grace, and our souls long for it. We are imperfect people surrounded by imperfect people. We have to live a graceful life. Graceful, F-U-L-L, but also single, so full of grace. So my challenge, when I first preached the disturbing grace sermon, I told a story about me and my son in the rain and getting caught in the rain, and his perspective was the storm, the rain, the lightning, the thunder, not knowing that soon the sun would be out, or I would have him out of that storm soon. You may find yourself in the middle of a storm this week in your life, the last few months, the past year. You might find yourself lost, hurt, confused, and you may be crying out for some grace from somewhere, from the divine, from those around you. And what you're wanting is disturbing grace. The best way to receive grace is to extend it. My dad told me something just before he passed away, and it took me many years to try to figure out what it meant. And I'm not sure I fully understand it, but he was hooked to a dialysis machine, and he said I was covering him up with a blanket, and we were having one of those talks that you have with a parent that goes beyond typical parent and son conversation. And he said to me something that stuck with me. You only have in life what you give away. Gosh, it took me a lot of years to figure that one out. But I think it's how Monica and I operate in our lives. We try our best to operate. We believe that in order to live in abundance, we have to be abundantly giving people. We believe that to be able to live in grace, we have to be people who extend grace to people. In order to have peace in our lives, we have to give peace away. It's a matter of living it, speaking it, and doing it. And not a lot of people understand it. You only have in life what you give away. It's why we're such a giving people. We are protective of our tribe and the people we love. Don't get me wrong. We are protective of our home. We're protective of each other. But when we operate in an abundant way by giving away things, we seem to receive it back 100-fold. So my challenge for you is simple. Surround yourself with people who will give you grace, but who you can give grace to. Extend grace to those who don't deserve it. Give it away like you have it in abundance. It's that sacrificial grace that's going to cause you a great deal of peace and love in your life. Your vibe attracts your tribe. Right? We've said that for many years. You want to be surrounded by people who are loving? Then be loving to people. You want to surround yourself with people who are full of grace and mercy? Then give it away like it's candy. If you want to be surrounded by joy and happiness, then be a person of joy and happiness. Listen, if you constantly put negative things on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever the hell everybody's using nowadays, then you're going to attract those negative things to your life. But if you're a person who fakes it, even if you have to, regurgitate love and happiness, be ridiculous with your grace and your love, then what's going to happen is that's going to come back to you in abundance. And I'm not saying lie. Don't lie. If you're unhappy, then find somebody to share your unhappiness with so that they can lift you up. But don't live in it. Don't wallow in it. Don't listen, don't wallow in mud expecting to be happy and clean and smelling good. If you're going to be happy and joyful, then you got to surround yourself with people who are happy and joyful and give you grace. You know, when I had James on my back in that storm, and I kept telling him, Daddy's going to get you home. We're going to get somewhere safe. And I just kept telling him over and over, I love you, and we're going to get home. I love you, and we're going to get home. He was terrified, right? Lightning and thunder for a little baby hanging on your back. He was terrified. And we're going to have those moments in the storms where we're terrified and we're scared and we're surrounded by lightning and thunder and rain and we're wet and scared and soaked. That's when you reach out to those who you've surrounded yourself with so that they can help you get to dry, get to comfort, get to peace, get to joy. So I hope that this week we'll be people who are extending love and grace to those who don't deserve it. I hope that you witness sometime this week a grace that bothers you to your core and learn from it so that you can be the person who extends that grace to someone who doesn't deserve it. I hope that we can extend grace to even those who don't see it coming and it shocks them, scares them. You know what's hard for me in this climate we live in? And I'm going to be very transparent here, when I come across people who still kind of support the former president and say things that are hurtful to the current president, I get real bristled, right? I get real defensive. And it's hard for me to extend grace to them because, well, I hate that sentiment, right? And yet, when we extend grace to those we don't always agree with, it's the epitome, the definition of true, disturbing grace. And then finally, let's hold on to each other with grace, graceful hands that disturb the people around us. You know, I tell this story all the time, and I'll shut up. But the first time I attended Joshua Generation, I knew that the place was totally different than anything I'd ever been to, right? And I say this, I tell it all the time, but Devin, and I don't know if he's watching, but Devin had come to church on Sunday morning having competed in a drag show the night before. He still had half his makeup on him. I mean, and I'll be straight with you. At that point in my life, hadn't been to many drag shows. Zero. And so to see a drag queen crawl in front of me on his hands and knees to go take up the offering required an element of grace that I didn't know I had in me to go, okay, the place is different. Obviously, when they say everyone's welcome, they mean it. And I had to tap into something that I didn't have before, and that was a grace that says, y'all means all. And I knew right then that the tribe that I was in at the moment, or trying to plug into, would probably accept me in my brokenness where I was. A grace. It disturbed me then. It disturbs me now when I watch our tribe in action, whether it be our social issues, whether it be toward one another, whether it's what BB and Susan do with regard to their shop. You know that when you walk into their store, there's an aroma there, not just from I don't know what all they burn in there, but there's an aroma to the place that says, welcome. You're welcome here. It's what Monica and I have tried to create in our home. When you walk in, we want you to feel the presence of love and grace and peace. And so our tribe needs to be surrounded by that kind of grace. Now look, I know that I turned the big 5-0 at some point this week. We're not celebrating that. I'm not. But I want to say, during this month of June how much Monica and I love each and every one of you. I hope that you know that we are always and forever allies till we die. We have been, and we will continue to be, allies in support of each and every one of you. And I know that June is a hard month for some people, especially those whose families have possibly disowned them. But I know that many of you know we have a group that meets on Friday nights here in Mobile. And if I've learned anything from that group, it is very simple. Love covers a multitude of sins. And what I mean by that is you can shower people with a love that you don't necessarily make everything right when it comes to people disowned by their family. But there's something about when Monica and I walk out of the doors with our free mom hugs and free dad hugs shirt, inevitably someone out there needs love, needs a hug. Let's extend it to those around us. Listen, we've all had our coming out story at some point. Even us straight folks have had a coming out story. Let's extend that grace. May we be a people who give grace upon grace without expectation of anything in return. I love you. Monica loves you. Happy Pride. Come see us in Mobile on Friday nights. Come see us anytime, really. We got spare rooms. We love and miss you, and we can't wait till we can all be together again. Remember, don't forget you can donate to the cause. Whitney posted the link earlier about how to give. While we don't have a building right now, the work that we do as a tribe continues.